This one thing reduces blood sugars faster and more effectively than anything else. It's super simple, every diabetic can do it, no matter if you have type 1, type 2 or any other form of diabetes. Let's talk about it. The most effective tool to lower your immediate blood sugars as well as your long-term blood sugars is improving insulin sensitivity. And I have 8 tips for you on how exactly you can do it. Insulin sensitivity is basically an indicator that shows how sensitive or resistant your body is to insulin. And insulin is the hormone which lowers blood sugar. So insulin sensitivity is good. Insulin resistance is bad. Unfortunately, many medical professionals ignore this topic, and instead of focusing on improving insulin sensitivity, they focus on prescribing more medications, and it bothers me. Now, if you are a type 1 diabetic, your body doesn't produce insulin and you need to inject it. The more insulin resistant you are, the more insulin you need to inject. If you're a type 2 diabetic or a pre-diabetic, your body probably still does produce some insulin. But the more insulin resistant you are, the more insulin you need, and the harder your body needs to work to produce that insulin. Or you might as well need to inject some additional insulin if your body cannot produce enough. But no matter what kind of diabetes you have, the more insulin sensitive you can get, the less insulin your body will need to keep your blood sugars low. So how can you improve your insulin sensitivity? I've been a type 1 diabetic for 35 years, so I think I know a thing or two about it. Let's start with tip number 8. Did you notice that whenever you are stressed, your blood sugars go up? Well, I definitely did. Stress puts your body into fight or flight mode, which stimulates the production of stress hormones like cortisol and glucagon. These break down glycogen into glucose that your body can use as a quick source of energy, and your blood sugar will spike as a consequence of that. Ongoing stress is even worse because it keeps the levels of these hormones high, and your body just needs more insulin to bring that blood sugar down, and your body becomes more insulin resistant. So tip number 8 is simple. Reduce stress levels. Identify those stressful situations and try to completely avoid them, or learn ways how to deal with them without getting stressed. What helps me reduce stress is regular exercise, enough sleep, and certain breathing techniques. You might want to look into those things. Moving on to tip number 7 on how to improve insulin sensitivity. Did you know that exercise helps move sugar from blood to muscles and reduces your blood sugar? You probably did, and you probably know that exercise promotes an immediate increase in insulin sensitivity, and this can last for 2 hours to up to 2 days, depending on the type of exercise. The kinds of exercise I do most often is jogging, hiking, and some high-intensity resistance training. When I go for a run or a walk, my blood sugar starts dropping almost immediately. A 30 to 45 minute run or walk is the fastest way for me to get my blood sugars down. Now, when I do a high-intensity or resistance training like push-ups, sit-ups, jumping jacks, or burpees, my blood sugar doesn't start dropping immediately. But I noticed that it actually starts going down a few hours later, and I'm way more insulin sensitive during the night and even the day after I did that resistance training. So tip number 7 to improve insulin sensitivity is to get moving and exercise at least 3 or 4 times a week. Pick the exercise you like the most, and if you have any limitations, pick the one that you can actually do. There are no restrictions otherwise. The only thing that you need to keep in mind is that aerobic activities like hiking, running, swimming, or cycling will in most cases lower your blood glucose very fast during and shortly after the actual activity. So if you are an insulin-dependent diabetic, you should always have a juice box or some glucose tabs on you, in case you need to treat a low blood sugar event. Anaerobic activities, on the other hand, like high-intensity or resistance training, might spike your blood sugar temporarily because they activate those stress hormones. But they typically improve insulin sensitivity and lower those blood sugar levels for several hours after the exercise, or even a couple days after that exercise. Moving on to tip number 6. And this one is good also for those who don't like exercise. One thing that can really increase that insulin resistance, which is what we don't want, is lack of sleep. There have been several studies that linked poor sleep to reduced insulin sensitivity. One study involved healthy volunteers who were getting not more than 4 hours of sleep a night, and compared them with a group of participants that were getting 8.5 hours of sleep. They could observe that the group who slept only 4 hours a night had lower ability to regulate their blood sugar levels, and their insulin sensitivity went down. They became more insulin resistant. And I can confirm from my personal experience, when I go to bed late, I sometimes struggle with stubborn higher blood sugars in the morning after, because I didn't get enough sleep. So tip number 6 is is get a good night's sleep. I personally sleep at least 7 to 8 hours a night, and I go to bed early because I read studies that suggest that you can get the best quality sleep before the midnight. I also like to sleep in relatively lower temperatures and avoid having caffeinated drinks in the afternoon and evening, because that also helps me get good quality sleep. Fortunately, catching up on lost sleep can reverse any effect of previously poor sleeping habits on insulin resistance. So it's not too late to start focusing on those sleeping habits if you feel like that's something you should do. Moving on to tip number 5 on improving insulin sensitivity. This one is super easy to do. It doesn't require a lot of hard work, but it brings real life results in terms of more stable blood sugar levels. And tip number 5 is adding more fiber to your meals. I love fiber because it slows down digestion. It slows down that blood sugar spike after any meal, even if you eat a meal full of carbs. And that insulin sensitivity impact is really noticeable when you start adding fiber to your diet. And you can do that even if you eat a specific diet, because fiber is in many different kinds of foods. In general, you can find fiber in fruits, vegetables, legumes, seeds, nuts, or grains. The less processed these are, the more fiber they will have. My favorite source of fiber, as you probably know if you watched my channel before, are chia seeds. I like to add them to almost anything. I also love to eat different kinds of bean and lentil stews and chilies, loaded with lots of vegetables. If you are afraid of blood sugar spikes after eating fruits, try to go for those that have lower glycemic index. Things like berries, avocado, grapefruit, guava, apricots, or kiwi. These fruits are very blood sugar friendly. Before I talk about the next insulin sensitivity tip, let's quickly talk about weight loss. And weight loss is not on my list of tips for improving insulin sensitivity. Although people who are obese and insulin resistant are often advised by medical professionals to lose weight in order to improve their insulin sensitivity. But I don't like to tell people to lose weight, because I simply think that if you follow all the previous tips I gave in this video, you will very unlikely be obese, especially in the long term. So let's not talk too much about weight loss and move on to tip number 4. This one is a bit more difficult to do, but in my opinion, it is one of the most important and most effective tools to improve insulin sensitivity in the long term. I talked about this on my channel many times, but I need to bring it up again here, because from my perspective, it makes a huge impact. Tip number 4 to improve insulin sensitivity is avoiding processed foods, especially those with added sugar, artificial trans fat, and other artificial ingredients. The easiest way to do that is to do more home cooking from whole foods and stop going to fast food restaurants. Now, I still think it's okay to eat certain processed foods from time to time. Some olive oil, Greek yogurt, dark chocolate if you're a fan. These things will not do that much damage in terms of insulin sensitivity. It's also okay to go for an occasional pasta or bread if you really need to. But a rule of thumb I would use here, always go for a whole grain version of these things. Always check the label. Look for those things that have no added sugar and more fiber. These will spike your blood sugar much less and a lot slower. And if this kind of diet seems too challenging for you, you don't have to go all in at once. You can start slowly replacing the ingredients that you use in your kitchen. You can start replacing the problematic ones with the healthier ones. Just go step by step. And you will see that your blood sugars will improve a lot really soon. By the way, there is one tool that I want to mention that I used a lot when I was transitioning to more home-cooked meals. It's a phone app called Clinio. This app will help you build your own customized meal plan. You just need to go through a quick 2-minute questionnaire and tell the app what your goals are. After that, you get a complete meal plan with instructions on how to cook each meal and a shopping list that you can print out and head out to the store. I partnered with Clinio and they have a 79% discount code for you, Tom79. Now, before we talk about 3 more tips for improving insulin sensitivity, we need to address the elephant in the room, a low-carb diet. You probably know that whenever you eat a meal that has carbs, your blood sugar will go up, no matter what kind of diabetes you have or how insulin sensitive you are. And the common piece of advice shared within the diabetes community or even by medical professionals is this: if you want to avoid high blood sugars, eat less carbs. Go low carb and your blood sugars will be just fine. But will a low carb diet really help you improve insulin sensitivity? Not really. Eating low carb on its own will not improve your insulin sensitivity sensitivity. It can actually have the exact opposite effect. You can become more insulin resistant if you eat low carb, high fat. That's exactly what happened to me. Now don't get me wrong, eating low carb is a great way to avoid these nasty blood sugar spikes, and it actually makes it very easy to achieve a non-diabetic blood sugars very fast. But eating low carb will not fix the insulin resistance problem, especially if you eat a lot of unhealthy fats as part of your low carb diet. Moving on to my tip number 3 for improving insulin sensitivity. And this one is quite interesting because it is a specific way of eating, but it doesn't focus that much on what you eat, but when you eat. Many researchers claim that when you practice time-restricted eating or intermittent fasting regularly, it might increase your chances for a longer life. Some studies also suggest that intermittent fasting can help reduce insulin resistance, but it doesn't have immediate impact on the blood sugar levels. Still, I like time-restricted eating a lot because it helps me improve self-control, amongst other things. There are many ways how you can practice the time-restricted eating, but the one that I like the most, or I do most often, is the 16-8, meaning I eat during an 8-hour window and the remaining 16 hours of each day I fast. And my eating window usually falls between 11 a.m. and 7 p.m. When I do that, I don't eat anything after 7 p.m. and I skip breakfast. I only have black coffee in the morning. Tip number 2 is probably the most important thing that can help you improve insulin sensitivity on this list. And if you watched my channel before, you probably know what I'm going to say, because this thing is a game changer. And tip 2 is check your blood sugars regularly, or better yet, get a continuous glucose monitor if you can. The more you check, the better you will understand how certain foods, exercise, stress, and other things impact your blood sugar levels and your insulin sensitivity. And you will be in a much better position to decide which lifestyle choices you want to make in the future. And I think it's really important because we only live once, and I believe 99% of any potential diabetes complications can be eliminated if you focus on checking your blood sugars and keeping your blood sugars under control. Moving on to tip number 1. Let's talk about the magic pill for insulin sensitivity. Is there any supplement, herb, or anything else that you can take every morning or every evening and it will help you improve your blood sugars, reduce your insulin resistance for the years to come? Well, there are certain natural substances that can help with that, especially if you have type 2 diabetes. Things like apple cider vinegar, fenugreek, amla, berberine, and others. But I'm personally not using them. I'm not saying they don't work, but I have a feeling there are too many people here on YouTube and everywhere else on the internet. They are trying to sell me some magic pill that will fix my diabetes forever. And that discourages me a bit from exploring the topic of different herbs and supplements a little bit further. I stick to my favorite diabetes superfoods instead. So my tip number 1 is eat more diabetes superfoods. Go check out my video about my top 7 diabetes superfoods that I eat almost every day. Click it here and watch it next. I will see you there. Ciao.